100 days of Modi government, what has the man in the machine accomplished is the answer everyone has been seeking in the past few days. And for once, on a real estate platform like the Property Show, even we have a legitimate reason to delve into that question. For once, housing and smart cities are at the forefront of policy making and not a subject relegated to the backseat. For once, I have industry players and policy makers eager to come and share their thoughts on the program. We didn't have to chase them to come, and that's saying it all. Well, all of that should make today's debate an exciting and informative one. Welcome everyone to yet another discussion on 100 days of Modi government. Only this time we will focus on homes, cities and urban spaces. My panelists today, Mufatraj Muno, Chairman Kalpatru Group, Ramesh Nair, CEO, Business and International Director, JLL India, Srinath Sridharan, Convener Group Management Center, DHFL Financial Services, Dr. Arvind Prasad, Director General FICCI, Arun Mishra, former Housing Secretary, and we'll also be joined a little later on the show by Shailesh Pathak, Executive Director of the Bhartiya Group. So I do have some of the key points on what has been the most exciting part of this government. Well, of course, some of the key things that we know, his PM's most ambitious project of creating 100 smart cities, which has now got wings with Singapore and Japan committing investment and technology assistance. Government has set 2019 as the deadline to deliver the first 3 smart cities, all of which will be built as part of the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. So I'm going to take one at a time and then, of course, go on to reeling out the rest of the 100-day report card. Mr. Mufatraj, smart cities has just become the buzzword this week with the Japan visit. But do you think that in the 100 days, that's the most novel idea which has come from the Modi government, or there's something else which has excited you of the first 100 days? What have been the hits and misses?
At least, this smart city idea is a great idea, and if it is implemented, which I'm sure they will do, maybe the speed may be a question, but that will definitely solve a lot of issues. But what much more important than that is that they must plan the existing cities, how they can upgrade that, because that's also a major task which government has to take it up.
Okay, Arun Mishra, what do you think? 100 smart cities, and there's just so much excitement around the Prime Minister's visit to 2 countries, one after the other, Japan, looking at Kyoto, looking at Varanasi, saying how do you actually change a legacy city into a smart city, all of that. It just sounds so exciting. I'm just wondering how it will happen though.
Well, the details will have to be spelled out clearly, but the fact is that when you talk about a smart city, a new 100 smart cities, it really opens up an area for investment. It opens up a different way of looking at urban space management. Like my predecessor said, it's very important that we also look into the existing cities, but these 100 smart cities will definitely fire the imagination of the investing community.
All right, fire the imagination of investment community. Shailesh Pathak has just joined in, and I know for him this is of course now the agenda, smart cities. Shailesh Pathak, go ahead, tell us. I mean, there's many a slip between the cup and the lip though. The Singapore government also wants to know, all right, we're ready to come in, help you out, but what do you mean by a smart city? Is it just IT enablement, or is it smart city all the way? Where do we start? And where do you think this government will start?
Thank you. We've spent a lot of time on this, and we believe that the smart city that we are putting up in Hebbal in Bangalore represents the best in class in many ways. The design objective for our city is that a 3-year-old can walk to her school without any adult supervision. So suddenly it's much more than technology. It is about urban design. Can people walk to work? Can people cycle to work? Can we design intelligent transport systems? So, IT is just one of the many things that goes into a smart city. And we've gone across the world trying to imbibe elements of smart cities from various places. And we hope to invite decision makers to our Bangalore site. We are going to make 4 more cities in South India. And of course, we are going to call them smart cities for the residents. It's not for the technology companies or the real estate guys. It is for the citizens of that city.
Ramesh Nair, if I'm looking at smart cities, the government has actually spoken about a lot of them around the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor. They talk about Dholera, they talk about Bitkin and a global city. You know, so the canvas seems so large to me. There are private players such as Shailesh who are looking to develop their own. Then there is a government agenda of developing many around corridors which I think are growth corridors. Is it too mammoth a task, or do you think that not at all? It's fairly achievable.
Definitely, I think it's one of the good initiatives the government has taken, announcing these smart cities. But I think it's, Manisha, a little too early to actually judge the government based on 100 days. Real estate, has a lag time of 9 to 12 months. So first we need to see the GDP go up, and then real estate markets will start improving. Election results don't make or break real estate markets. Real estate fundamentals and real estate sentiments impact real estate markets. At least from the sentiments front, what we are seeing across the country are teams across asset classes, whether it's residential, retail, office, industrial, land. All of them are a lot more busier than what they were 3 months back. Demand has definitely not gone up in the second quarter. Just before coming here, I checked the numbers. Office demand last year second quarter was 7 million. This year second quarter 7 million. Residential demand last year second quarter 50,000 units. This year actually it's dropped 37,000 units. That's mainly because of election time. Not too many developers launching new projects, and a lot of people kind of sitting on the fence. What we are seeing is there is definite positive momentum in the market. Let me give you an example. 2 years back, we were trying to sell a land worth 700 crores in Mumbai. There were just 3 bidders to buy that land. Last month, we were trying to sell a land which is more than 1,000 crores in Mumbai, and there were 13 bidders for that land. So I think overall that shows that positive momentum is improving. If you look at the bulge bracket sovereign funds, names like ADIA, CPPIB, QIA, APG, all these guys today are looking at committing more towards India. That's again a positive sign. So again, coming back, I think it's a little too early. We should have this discussion probably in another 6 to 9 months' time.
How can that happen, Ramesh Nair? Everyone's talking about 100 days. We have to talk about 100 days. It's just, of course, a little heartbreaking when you see the numbers and the sentiments in real estate. But Srinath Sridharan, do you second Ramesh Nair's views that at least on the investment front, if not in the real estate on the real estate sales front, on the investment front, the excitement is returning?
I think slightly difference of view with Ramesh because we've never seen any slack in demand at the Tier 2, Tier 3 segment. If you look at the bulge bracket purchase in terms of 1 crore plus, probably there could have been a slowdown. But the segments we serve, they've always kept on increasing. So having said that, any policy framework, land being a state subject, needs to be adopted in each of these states. And also, it, as Ramesh said, I would agree with him there, needs a percolation time of about a year before we actually see any impact in real estate development. But from the customer demand offtake in Tier 2, Tier 3, not at all. I think it's just been growing. Elections or no election, first home purchase, especially for the Indian consumer, is an emotional attachment and a prime financial need as well. So that's where I'm, so no slowdown at all that we have seen within our group.
My goodness, that's music to the ears, but I think overall data is speaking a very different or telling a very different story. Dr. Arvind Prasad, I mean, FICCI in collaboration with Knight Frank released a report very recently and really talked about a turnaround in sentiments. But I'm going to ask you a larger question because you represent an industry body which of course catches the pulse of the country. What do you think? I mean, 100 days, what are the hits and misses?
No, as you said that real estate or any other industry, the overall economy is going to matter. So you just had 2 days back the first release of GDP, and that grew at 5.7% from 4.6% earlier. Of course, that was for the first quarter of this year, so partly for this government and partly the earlier government, but broadly that brought out the sentiments. So the real estate will also be ultimately affected by the broader economic sentiments we have. During this government, as you heard the other speakers, that the 100 smart cities concept has really ignited the imagination. But there are also some concrete achievements in terms of REIT, Real Estate Infrastructure Trust, the announcement on the tax policy which was creating some difficulties, and also SEBI has come out of the guidelines. For the long-term financing, the banks have been given some facilities where they can issue long-term bonds. The insurance bill, unfortunately it could not be passed in this session, but insurance bill, raising of FDI in insurance is also related to raising of FDI in pension, and these two will provide long-term financing. So on the tax laws, there has been some clarity, though some other are expected. There are many other things which are to be followed by the government, but broadly there has been a very positive move and sentiments getting reflected in overall enhanced GDP, the increased interest in real estate. We have a mixed response in terms of what is the response from the real estate consumer side, but from the government side they raised the up to 2 lakhs interest from the tax benefit, and also so there are indication from the government, the real estate income, and the whole economy is to move around this industrial corridor, economic activities and urbanization. So you have Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor, you have Amritsar-Calcutta corridor, you have Chennai-Bengaluru corridor, Bengaluru-Mumbai corridor. So the framework has been clearly announced. And obviously, as the previous speaker mentioned, 100 days is too small time to make any critical judgment, but directions are definitely very positive on all sides.
Let's move beyond the smart cities concept per se. Even if you look at urban infrastructure now, the Urban Development Ministry has framed a 25-point charter for urban planning and management. It's, talking about things like infrastructure, energy efficiency. It's also talking about waste management. Where is the capacity?
It's a very big challenge. And if I can just sort of sum it up, the Varanasi-Kyoto agreement was not signed by the mayor of Varanasi called Ram Gopal Mohale. It was signed by the Indian ambassador, who's a very illustrious person, Deepaji. But the problem of capacity, both in the elected officials and the appointed officials at the city government level, is one of the biggest things that will hold back urbanization in India. And the only thing I can think of is instead of the central level or the state level, we need these capacities at the city level. Any city outside India. Look at Kyoto. Mayor Kadokawa is the 26th mayor of Kyoto. Kyoto has a population of 1.4 million, 14 lakh. Varanasi has a population of 1.2 million, 12 lakh. But there is a world of difference between these two cities. So capacities at the city level are our biggest challenge. How have we solved it? We have a 126-acre town city, Bharatiya city in Bangalore. And we have, as you said, talked about energy efficiency, we've talked about recycling, we've talked about sustainability, and this entire master planning has gone in for the last 4 years. This kind of capacity we need to build in every city government.
Okay. Arun Mishra, look at the things that you attempted to do during your tenure in the housing ministry. Framing the real estate regulator bill, looking at the issue of single window clearance. There was, of course, also heading the task force on creating and financing affordable housing, introducing, implementing affordable housing policy, creating credit risk guarantee fund. The list is fairly long, Mr. Mishra. So it wasn't as if there was not intention earlier as well. It just never got translated. Do you get, now that you're outside of the government viewing this, you've got a ringside view of all that's happening or has happened in the first 100 days, do you get more confidence on the implementation front? How will it all happen?
You see, there are two important things which have been announced by the present government. One, of course, is a target of housing for all by 2022. and then of course total sanitation coverage by 2017. So between these two major goals, I think most of the issues that are being discussed about capacity building, making the municipalities functional, implementing the affordable housing programs, streamlining the procedures, all of this will have to be put into place. Only then these two major targets can be achieved. So when you really get into the details of implementing these two major targets, housing for all by 2022 and sanitation by 2017, all the steps that we had initiated in the last 3 years will be taken to its logical end. So to that extent, I'm quite excited because these are two very aspirational goals, very challenging goals, but I also believe that they are doable goals. Despite the lack of capacity that you are talking about, of course it will take time to build up the capacity, but even with the current level of capacities that we have at the state level, central level and the municipality level, I think these two goals are worthy of pursuing, and I personally feel that 100 days is hardly a time in which you can really assess the performance of any individual, what to speak of a government as large as the Indian government. So I'm sure it shouldn't be too difficult.
So I'm happy to hear that it's doable even with the current capacity, because you just suddenly can't make, build capacity overnight, and the ball has to get rolling or set rolling right away. We're going to come back and delve into how do you get the ball rolling when it comes to housing for all by 2022, when it comes to smart cities. And of course, there is a big challenge which we always have debated, land acquisition. You want to create brand new cities along the industrial corridors. You need that land from farmers. How will that happen without the amendment of the current Land Acquisition Act in the country? Stay with us. We're looking at 100 days report card of the Modi government. The intention spelled out, because housing is a long-term work. It cannot happen over time, but intention itself, how do you place it at the moment? 100 days of the Modi government when it comes to housing, urbanization and of course smart cities is what we are discussing today. We love the buzzwords in media, and why would we not also use that buzzword to look at what has happened and what can happen by 2022. Can Pakka housing for all Indians happen by 2022? Well, the panel here says that, of course, they've given a thumbs up to the first 100 days of the Modi government in terms of spelling out the intentions of what they want to do. We've established that real estate has come to the forefront. Now, the challenges of implementation, I think that's the big question. So I'm going to go back to the smart cities, because that also means a lot of land. Ramesh Nair, where will the land come from? I mean, acquiring land through the current Land Acquisition Act isn't an easy task. We've read the Finance Minister's interview. He has said, I'm open to amending it, but I'm not open to actually changing the act or the law.
Manisha, I'm personally not a big fan of large lands because if you look at the overall demand for various asset classes of real estate, the country needs around 30 million square feet of office space in the 8 major cities. We're just talking of close to 300 acres for office. 10 million square feet of retail, that's another 100 acres of retail. The main cities, I'm talking only about the main cities, needs around 220 million square feet of residential. So we're talking around 2,200 acres. Now all these three put together, we're talking around the entire country over in the main 8 cities, needing only around 2,700 to 2,800 acres a year. And this is one of the main reasons where 5 or 6 of the Delhi developers were sitting on 60,000 acres of land, and the market didn't, the stock markets didn't give any value to those 50 to 60,000 acres of land. So I think it's less to do with land. It's more to do with infrastructure development. Whatever the government has told in the recent budget, whether it's investing that 40,000 crores of this year in highways, creating that 8,000 kilometers of highways this year, creating those 16 ports, creating the Mumbai-Delhi industrial corridor. I think if all this falls in place, land will automatically happen. I don't see that as a big challenge, because if infrastructure comes, land will be created all around, and that will increase supply, whereby prices will remain stable and make it easier for people to buy homes.
Very interesting point, Ramesh Nair. We keep screaming from the top of the, houses that, okay, land is a big problem in the country, but okay, Dr. Arvind Prasad, what do you think? I mean, do you agree with Ramesh Nair? If the numbers he's talking about, 2,700 to 2,800 acres is all that you require to create grade A office space, what you need is infrastructure, and that's the key to India's urbanization process?
Well, to that extent, it is correct that ultimately it is the creation of infrastructure and economic activities which will inspire the players to come around. Even regarding the land, it is the land acquisition is one part. But what has been creating difficulties both for the landowners and also for those who use land for industrial and urban infrastructure is the change of land use, the way it is done. Because most of the value creation comes by changing of the land use permission. So the farmers often felt cheated because you bought the land as agricultural land and then change it to industrial or urban land, creating a huge value to that land. And so from the FICCI we have always been demanding that this change of land use, which also creates difficulty for infrastructure developer, say urban infrastructure, the township developer, because you get the land, buy the land, acquire the land, and then run around the government to change the land use and creating a heartburn for the previous owner. We have been requesting the government that the change of land use should be done to begin with. The moment you decide that this is in urban infrastructure area, township area, the change of land use should be automatic so that the current landowner gets the benefit of this change of land use.
Mr. Munot, your group is not just into real estate, you're into industry, you're into power. What do you think? I mean, in the current state that we have the Land Acquisition Act, does the government needs to get onto the drawing board very quickly, at least look at amendments, though I agree with Mr. Jaitley that, changing an act within the first year isn't the right direction or the right way to go, because that itself has taken so long to come through.
I personally feel, of course, for the Mr. Nair has given some figures, but there are huge areas needed for infrastructures along with the housing and commercial infrastructure. For infrastructure, the large land is needed, and the land acquisition is a big hurdle. Beside the compensation part, there are a lot of legal hurdles, there are a lot of old laws. Various infrastructure requires land are taken under the different laws, which are outdated laws and which the farmers doesn't allow it to happen, like whether it's a transmission towers, which is governed under not Land Acquisition Act, but it is governed under Post and Telegraph Act, whether even the oil and gas pipeline, they are also governed under different act. So all these land acquisition is a big hassle. The laws are very difficult. It is very difficult to handle people, and all infrastructure projects are suffering very badly because of the land issues only. Each project, instead of 2 years, taking 4 to 5 years, and which is killing the contractors as well as the project itself.
Industry players. All right, fair enough, sir. So
that one of the important thing when we talk about this whole implementation. One important para is that, we need a planning of the whole issues, whether it's a smart city, whether the upgradation of the existing cities. We do not have adequate planners to plan and envisage what are the difficulties and how we can solve it.
Shailesh, pick up on both of them. One is land. For creating brand new cities, you will need land, which Mr. Munot feels is a big challenge today for both infrastructure and creation of new cities and planning.
Let me begin with land. I was looking at the 2013 Land Act. It has a provision for housing and affordable housing in section 2D-EF of the definition of public purpose. But I was at a FICCI event, Dr. Arvind Prasad would remember, where the finance minister said that in the list of exemptions to this Land Acquisition Act, 2013 Act, in the fourth schedule there are 13 laws that are exempted. Perhaps the quickest is for affordable housing. Putting that in the fourth schedule is the 14th exemption. If I remember clearly, he said defense and affordable housing are far too important to be left to the normal ponderous process of this act. That's number one. As far as planning is concerned, you know, almost every city, we have 6,000 reasonably sized towns and cities in India. And it is my surmise that almost all of them will double in size over the next 20 years. But in terms of planning, I think this corridor concept is a welcome change. And specifically, I'll talk about the Chennai-Bangalore corridor. This is about 300 kilometers. And the planning process has identified 3 locations along the corridor where we can really create state-of-the-art smart cities and towns. Now, suddenly, you're not looking at land everywhere. You're just looking at these 3 places along a 300-kilometer corridor, which is linked by high-speed logistics. And that is the way to go, in my view.
Okay. Shailesh, what happens then? I mean, I'm trying to juxtapose your argument with Ramesh's argument, where he says that, hey, look, you have real estate players sitting on huge land banks, but all that you need is just about 2,700 to 2,800 acres of good land for commercial or, you know, office space. How do you create new cities? Who's going to go and live in them? How do you get offices to set up? So isn't that something which also worries you? You're creating a Bharatiya city, but how are you going to get it populated? By office creation of jobs so that people can walk from their homes to workspaces.
That's absolutely the right question for all of us to answer. Number one, Bharatiya city is within Bangalore city limits, and our ITSEZ is starting next month. So we'll have enough jobs already for our rest of the city.
Okay, let's say we put you out and you create one on the corridor and much further out.
You know, so Ramesh is right when he says that these land banks are around existing cities. What we are talking about is new cities. And new cities should not come in the back of beyond. They should be on a high-speed transport corridor, which is why Dholera in Gujarat or Shendra Birkin in Maharashtra or the cities in the Bangalore-Chennai corridor are bound to do well because they'll have connectivity. It's all about connectivity. You can't suddenly, you know, say, this is a dot and I'll create a new city. It won't work.
All right. Arun Mishra, would you agree with it? I mean, you know, if you create cities, you just stick to the industrial corridors and you plan out cities on that industrial corridor. That's the way for India to go ahead and become a global, I mean, compete with the best and globally?
I think maybe I have not been able to understand. You know, my assessment is that if you say that you require only 3,000 acres of land for residential purposes, I think it is an underestimation.
So office space. I think what
he mentioned about 100 to 200 acres for commercial and office space and about 2,800 for residential.
Okay. All right.
So that's very low. Even for 3,000 acres, I don't know. But 3,000 acres at a density of about 100 to 200 will cater to just about 600,000 people. So that's not sufficient. And my feeling is that you require much more land than that for any kind of reasonable housing activity. The second point is designing a plan over 130 acres is very different from designing something on 130 square miles. What our representative from Kalpataru was mentioning about the lack of planning process in existing towns. And in India, it's a fact that not many municipalities and towns have planning bodies. They do not have. Some of the big cities, development authorities, they have a planning body, but most of the municipalities do not have. And that is fundamental and that has to be done. But having said this, I personally feel that land acquisition and land pooling is going to be very, very critical. And we really, whatever we may say, that we really don't have a very large land bank around any city for that matter. There might be a couple of exceptions here and there. Some promoters have got some land with them. But most of the people are desperately trying to acquire land either through acquisition or through pooling or through outright purchase or through allotment. And that is a process which has to be supported. That is a process which has to be expedited. And land use conversion is very important. Any place beyond the city where you want to develop, you require land, and land use conversion is very important. So these are the nitty-gritty that has to be worked out, because my last experience of last 3 years has told me categorically that the single most important bottleneck for any of these things is land. And that has to be done. The corridors, even these townships that are being planned, they require thousands of acres of land.
Okay.
It's not that
So,
you don't
Mr.
require
Mishra,
it.
am I hearing you right that, the amendments that Minister Jaitley is talking about in the Land Acquisition Act should perhaps happen the first and the fastest?
Yeah, I will go by that. Whatever little amendment that is required in the Act, by way of removing some of these procedural issues particularly and facilitating land acquisition, should be attended, and it will benefit not only housing, because affordable housing, like you said, we include it as one of the public purposes, but if some of the procedural issues like environmental impact assessment requirements and other things are taken care of, it shall be a tremendous help both to the housing sector and to the infrastructure sector.
All right, gentlemen, hold your thought there. We're going to come back and we're going to now ask all of you, what should the government's priority be in the next 12 months? 5 years, this country really doesn't have now 5 years to implement things. It needs to get implemented in the next 12 months, and perhaps at the end of the 5 years, when the BJP government comes around to standing and getting or asking for our mandate again, you will see the results. So next 12 months, what is on the wish list of this panel from the BJP government? That's when we come back in a moment. Alright, so we've highlighted the 100-day report card on housing, smart cities and urban agenda of this government. But what about the next 12 months, or let's even shorten it to say just next 9 months, so that what do we see in the first 1 year, which is of course the most critical year for the BJP government. Whatever it implements will take a while to actually show results, and we are hoping that the turnaround will happen sooner than later. Srinath Sridharan, your 3 or 4 key things that you would like from this government. It could even be just one thing.
Sure. I think a couple of points. Start off with town planning and make it a very all-inclusive town planning, because if you don't create centers of economic excellence, we're not going to have people move into these new called cities. We don't need ghost cities at all. The cities have to pay for itself. So I refer to a phrase which we use internally. We call cities behave the way they are financed, which means, are we building cities which are self-sufficient, which can pay for itself in the longer run? That's something which is very, very important. And two, if you look at the demographics of the new cities or the smaller cities, Tier 2, Tier 3, it's a younger demographics as well. I was very surprised to read a recent report where it speaks about the number of DINGs, double income and no kids, is far higher in the Tier 2, Tier 3 India rather than urban India. So which means we are looking at a scenario where the younger population, which is going to live and work for the next 30 years or upwards, needs a city to be proud of. So can we get down to the very basics of smart planning and smarter execution? Because we keep speaking about need for a smart policy, but I think it's time we get into smart execution as well.
All right.
That'll be my wish list.
Okay, so we've seen the glimpses of smart policy. I think that's where we stand. Over to you, Dr. Pradhan. What do you think? Dr. Prasad?
Oh, yes. I would think that just before the break, the point came on the economic opportunities to populate the cities. So I would think that government should focus on ease of doing business, because ultimately, not only for the real estate, for starting the industrial production or other activities, ease of doing business will be the key thing, which government has already initiated. The one critical element is complex tax structure, the state tax, municipal tax, the central tax, entry tax and all that. So there is already a framework which has been worked at, that is what called GST, the goods and service tax. So I would expect the government brings it to the conclusion.
Ramesh Nair, what's on your wish list?
I think the government has started quite well, allowing FDI, reducing FDI limits from 50,000 square meters to 20,000 square meters. Definitely on the positive side. REIT legislation definitely on the positive side. Income tax deductions under ATC, whether it's on principal or interest, or income tax exemption itself from going up to 2.5 lakhs. So I think all that on the positive side. If there are two things the government can do, I think there should be a single window clearance for homes priced less than 10 lakhs. I know approvals is a state subject, but if there can be some mechanism where there is self-certification, self-approval for homes priced less than 10 lakhs. I remember the famous Deepak Parikh's statement saying 25 million homes required in India. But when we analyze that, 24 million homes out of this 25 million homes is required for LIG and EWS, so which are homes priced less than 5 or 7 lakh rupees per unit. So that, and I think government needs to build lots of roads. So lots of roads plus affordable housing, single window approvals.
Okay, on your wish list, Mr. Munoth, sir, on your wish list.
I think, the government should really make a detailed checklist what are to be done. And one of the most important things is to appoint the best world town planners to design all corridors where the new smart cities to come, which inclusion of the industrial and the economical development of that area, as well as the existing cities, how to upgrade the whole town planning.
Okay, so you're saying take help. Don't think you can do it all. Get the best internationally and just get the ball rolling. Shailesh, Pathak.
I mean, they have to appoint
three
the
things.
world best.
Number one, like the 15th of August speech, Prime Minister Modi mentioned that each member of parliament should think of a model village. Since cities are largely governed from the state level, each state could be persuaded to take up one smart city in that particular state, which is not the state capital. And the virtuous competition will begin once you have one city which is excelling, and this can happen in the next 1 year. Perhaps the first thing to do is to get all the mayors and the councillors and the chief municipal officers into a plane and take them to Kyoto and show them the kind of railway station that Kyoto has built, which is better than an airport. So that's my first wish list. Eminently doable in the next 1 year. The second draws from an interaction I had a couple of weeks ago with a few members of parliament when we were discussing urban infrastructure. And all of them wanted to know how to upgrade their bus terminals and their railway stations. Within the next 1 year, can we take out the enthusiastic members of parliament, 543 Lok Sabha, 200 odd Rajya Sabha, and ask them to nominate 1 or 2 bus terminals and railway stations and put it out in public-private partnership, eminently doable in the next 1 year.
Okay.
The third is a cause dear to our heart in Bhartiya, affordable housing. How can we make affordable housing easier?
All right, Arun Mishra, you get the final word because you've seen it from inside.
You see, the one very positive step that is taken was revising the loan limit for priority sector loaning to 50 lakh rupees.
Absolutely.
That's a very positive step. It really helped. But more important than that, of course, is to make finances available for below 10 lakh housing. That number is very, very large. So that is one area which I would like to be emphasized. If required by interest subvention, like we have introduced a scheme, but that is something which requires to be pushed, because without that you cannot really cater to the EWS and LIG category of people. That is one. The second area which I think they should include it is the amendment to the rent control laws. That's very crucial. If you want to bring in private sector investment, if you want to allow people to invest in housing activities, rent control law amendments are very, very important. That is the second thing. Third thing, because sanitation is something which I feel very strongly about, the implementation of the Manual Scavenging Act of 2013, which mandates the municipality, the states and the central government to make India toilet free, open defecation free, not toilet free, sorry, open defecation free within the next 3 years' time. That implementation of the particular law bill will automatically make this concept of total sanitation by 2017 come through. So whatever checklist that the ministries must be preparing now or might have already prepared, these 3 or 4 things that I would like to be included, because that, to me, I think they're very important.
Absolutely critical. Gentlemen, well, that's a long list, but really, if I'm going through it, none of it is seeming like an impossible dream. Everything can be done in the next 12 months, 9 to 12 months. Well, we've looked at the first 100 days of the BJP government led by Narendra Modi, and we are at least assured that home cities and urban spaces will be a huge priority for the government. The panel has, of course, outlined on how it can all come together, and it will come together. It just still needs to be fleshed out. Implementation will be a challenge, but when there is good intent, or where there is good intent, there's always a way out. On that hopeful note, we'll wrap today's discussion. Let me thank all of you for joining me today. And, well, we'll keep a close eye on these exciting times in the next 12 months. And we hope to have you back in the studio to do a report card at the end of 1 year. Thanks very much to all of you for watching, and goodbye.